So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Bryant. I'm the Vice President of Regional Programs for the SIFMA Foundation. You are joining me for SMG Prep Week for Spring 2024, where we have the opportunity to help you successfully launch the stock market game in your respective classroom. But it's not limited to the classroom anymore. So whether you're joining us because you are a stock market game teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're a mentor, whether you utilize this with a nonprofit, or other, you're in a good space. So session 2 is going to be all about how to utilize and launch the stock market game, how to get started, how to implement it. We'll do a thorough overview of the Teacher Support Center, how to access resources, how you can access and track your student portfolios, the different ways to utilize the curricula and what curriculum is available. We'll also do a deeper dive into the portfolio experience and what that looks like, how to access the portfolio, make transactions, ways to confirm those transactions, and complete flow. And of course, we'll answer any questions that you have about direct implementation. I am joined with my colleague, Martha, who is in the chat box. She's going to handle all things. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to direct them to the chat. Well, she will answer them, or we'll let you know if it's coming up soon. Also, we'll leave some time at the end of the session to directly address any questions that you may have, so don't worry there. Also, if you are interested in registering, if you have not registered yet, but you have some questions, don't worry. You can feel free we'll put a link in the chat for a quick registration tutorial that covers all the things that you may need regarding registration. So don't worry there. We won't be going over registration today, but you'll have everything that you need. If anything comes up, feel free to keep those questions going. The link to the registration tutorial is in the chat right now, and we'll follow up with you at the end to send all links that we referenced today. So today's agenda, we're gonna cover a couple of things. We're gonna talk about setting some expectations, getting started and introducing the stock market game and provide some options for what that can look like for you. We're going to do a complete overview of the stock market game portfolio, discuss some ways to enhance your stock market game experience, and of course, we're gonna leave some time for questions. So let's get right into setting some expectations for what you can expect within the stock market game as an advisor. And I use the term advisor pretty broadly. An advisor in our world refers to anyone who intends to utilize the stock market game in a facilitator capacity. This is not limited to teachers, because the stock market game is not limited to teachers. There are a host of adults across the country that are utilizing the stock market game to teach personal finance and investing to their student, whether that's their child, whether it's a group of students, whether it's a homeschool co-op, etc. There's no limit. But because of that, with the stock market game, there is no prior knowledge of finance that's required to participate. It's one of the biggest misconceptions about the stock market game and teaching investing that we face, is that you need to come into it with some sort of prerequisite knowledge, and that's just simply not the case. If this sentiment relates to you, if you're thinking you need to teach business or you need to have some background, I want you to throw it out the window. That's not the case, and I'm going to help make it super simple for you. You also do not have to include all asset types at first. One of the big things that kind of piggybacks off of that first step, you don't need to know everything about finance. And in the stock market game, you can invest in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and ETFs as well, exchange traded funds. But you have the flexibility to involve yourself and involve your students in one particular security or all of them. If you're comfortable or you would prefer to only start with stocks, you have the ability to do that. If you want to softly introduce stocks and then mutual funds, you can do that. If you only want to focus on mutual funds, you can do that. The stock market game is meant to be extremely flexible, but at the end of the day, you can invest in all securities that are available on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. So our resources are also suggestions only. So we're going to discuss a few options today that you have
Annie's
to
on the phone.
introduce
Take the call.
topics to your students based on our resources, but you guys know your students best. You know what inspires them, you know what excites them and keeps them interested. And our stock market game teacher resources are filled with suggested pathways that work seamlessly for a majority of stock market game users. But you're more than welcome to adjust that based on your own preference. Okay. We're also going to ask that all participants please mute their mics so that we can make sure that we're not disrupting the rest of the session. And of course, we have number 4. Number 4 is the biggest one. You have each and every location has a local stock market game coordinator. So if all else fails, we are here to support you throughout your stock market game experience. If you have questions, if there's anything you get stuck on a particular point, if you want to brainstorm some ideas, we are here throughout your entire experience. Please do not hesitate to reach out to your local stock market game coordinator. If you are not registered yet and you're not sure who your local stock market game coordinator is, we'll drop a link on how to access your stock market game coordinator and a full list so you can look it up. Or you can also find it directly on our website at stockmarketgame.org. When you click on register, there's an option to view programs in my area. From there, you'll simply put your zip code, and when you scroll down, it has all of your respective contact information for your local stock market game coordinator. So next we have some advisor considerations. So the stock market game has a plethora of resources that are available at your disposal. There are a number of lessons with corresponding activities across all of the grade levels that we serve, which are 4th through 12th primarily. We have SMG training and content videos, we have webinars, and we're always adding more. So to ensure you are making the best use of your efforts, I always encourage teachers and other facilitators to consider a few things before diving in. One of them includes, what are your goals as a teacher or facilitator of the stock market game? That's simply, what do you want to achieve with your students? Do you want to do a general introduction to investing? Do you want to focus only on stocks? Are you looking to provide a broad overview of all the asset classes? Just have a general idea of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Another point is, what is the current level of understanding of your students? Have they been introduced to personal finance concepts before? And if they have, in what capacity? Because your approach to this may be different for students who have never heard of the stock market before versus those who have more thorough understanding of the economy and these financial instruments. So please know that this has nothing to do with the grade level of your students. I've encountered 4th grade students who are ready to hit the ground running and high school students who need to be introduced to the basics. The long and short of it is, I just want you guys to meet your students exactly where they are, and yourself too. And how much time do you have? How much time do you have to realistically commit to the stock market game and its instruction? Rest assured, it doesn't take much time to implement or to participate in the game or to utilize the platform. But in terms of how expansive would you like the program to be? Are you meeting with your students once a week? Are you utilizing this as a club where you're meeting every day for 30 minutes? That time frame will allow you to build out the program depending on how robust it needs to be. So let's kick off right into getting started. So for all of my stock market game advisors, stockmarketgame.org is your one-stop shop. It's the website, it's where you registered, it's where you'll enter your username and password to access our resources, it's where your students will go to access their portfolios, it's where you can access everything related to your stock market game experience. Once you're registered, you'll receive your username and password immediately via email for your teacher login. Student usernames and passwords will arrive separately, typically within the hour if it's a game session that's coming up soon or has already started. If you notice that you haven't received this information yet, or you never got a confirmation, usually it's in your spam folder, so please make sure to check that. On the screen, you'll see a sample advisor login that for the Teacher Support Center. It's always prefaced with typically your acronyms for your particular state. So whether it's New York, whether it's California, it would say CA. If you're in Texas, it may say TX or TX1, and et cetera, numbers within the middle, and then it'll end with a set of characters as well. You'll know it's your Teacher Support Center login because the last set of characters will always start with the letter T. The password will be another set of alphanumeric characters. And the biggest question I receive about usernames and passwords is, can it change? No, your username is not your email address. You will not create your own. It's system generated because it attaches to your specific registration, which also attaches to your specific game session that you're participating in. So your username remains the same throughout your participation in a game session, but you will have the opportunity to change your password if you so desire to do so. Now, when accessing the Teacher Support Center, there are two different usernames and passwords that you may encounter via email. I mentioned your Teacher Support Center ID, and then you'll receive student usernames and passwords. To access the Teacher Support Center, you can only do this via the browser. Now, we do have a stock market game app that's available on both the Google and Apple stores. Now, our stock market game app is for portfolio use only. To access our resources for the Teacher Support Center, you will need to access on a direct browser. So our Teacher Support Center, when you first log in, it'll bring you right there to the main page. It's home to our full suite of online resources that include lesson plans, activities, videos, calendars, and a whole lot more. So whether you're logging into your first game session or your 50th, I always encourage everyone to begin at the Start Here section. And just for additional reference, I'm actually going to walk you through a live version of the Teacher Support Center. So you see what it looks like. If you've already registered and you have your information already, feel free to go alongside with me. So stockmarketgame.org is where we begin. You log in with your username and password. Now, usernames and passwords are case sensitive, so you do want to make sure that you are entering the characters exactly as you have them. This also includes, excuse me, this also includes the underscores that are given to you. If you change your password, same rules apply. Just make sure you enter it exactly as you change them. When you first log into the Teacher Support Center, you're automatically brought to our main page, which includes our Start Here section. Start Here is exactly that. We want you to start there. I know though there are some of you who have been with us for years and you're like, I've got this. But education is always evolving, so we are too. So as we evolve, as we add new things, as we make certain adjustments, we always put those highlights right here. Other than those highlights, the Start Here section, if you're completely brand new, provides some context in terms of how to get started. It's those initial things that you may have questions about right at the onset, and you can find those answers here, including questions about team IDs and passwords, how to group your students. There are team roles, how to access your team portfolios, and that is a big question. Before people kick off, or when they do, they're wondering, you can have students that work individually or work in groups of 2 to 5. What's the best fit? And I'm honestly going to tell you, there's no one size fits all. Every class and group of students are different. Generally, our elementary and middle school teachers tend to group their students anywhere from 2 to 5, and they each share a portfolio. It helps to encourage collaborative learning. It helps to encourage some consensus building, and a great way to ensure that everyone has a role and feels engaged in groups is to provide roles. So we actually have a team roles handout that identifies some structure for each person in a group. But as I was saying, you can get through the Start Here section, which has a complete overview. But the SMG Essential Syllabus section is where a number of our teachers will spend lots of their time. Our stock market game syllabus is exactly that. We've outlined how to structure the game across 10 weeks. It's separated in sessions, which are really just topical sessions across session 1 through 10. Now, even though I say 10 sessions, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will take 10 weeks to go through it. You can feel free to move at a pace that works best for you and your students. Now, the SMG Essential Syllabus is so helpful because it makes it easy. There's nothing really for you to do. If you are like, I have limited time, I just need to know how to plug and play, the SMG Essential Syllabus does that for you. It provides the specific topic. It lets you know how to kick things off, which every topic will have an accompanying video that you can share, or you can give it to your students to watch on their own time, whether through homework or an enrichment activity or really quickly. After that video, there comes with a subsequent activity. So they have an opportunity to apply what it is that they just learned. And then it directs them to how do we then apply that to what happens directly in the portfolio. And then there's also breakout discussions and reflection. Every single topic has this, and it touches on all the core topics that students would need when learning about investing, from starting right at the basics of just introducing what investing is and the difference between saving and investing, and what is a company, what is a stock, all the way through to more advanced topics like diversification. And we're getting into what are mutual funds and bonds, how to create and evaluate your portfolio. It walks you through all of these topics. If you're wondering, I don't know if we have enough time for the entire duration of those 10 weeks, if you have more time than 10 weeks, you can feel free to build this out as much as you want. The stock market game is meant to be customizable. You can pick, you can choose, you can layer it in the way that you need to. If you have a personal finance unit that's about 3 weeks long and you're like, hey, can I do this in 3 weeks every day? Absolutely. You can build it out in the way that works for you. Next, we have our events calendar. That is where you can access all of the webinars that are available, stock market game office hours for within our stock market game teacher mentors, any available events that's going on for the System Foundation, you can find that here. One of the things I want to highlight about our webinars is that they're not solely geared towards program implementation and figuring out how you do this. If you want to advance your own understanding of financial instruments in some capacity, there are a number of webinars there. If you're like, I'm not really strong in mutual funds, I want to learn a little bit more about how that functions and how to utilize it in the stock market game, please join one of our mutual fund webinars. And we have those across topics. Next are view team portfolios. This is where you'll be able to access your student information. The view team portfolio section is where, whether you have one class, whether you have 60 classes operating under one game session, they can be found here. You'll see each of your class names, the number of teams that are requested, that you requested. Should you need to make adjustments to those teams, again, you can make those changes at any point in time by simply reaching out to your stock market game coordinator and letting them know you need additional teams, and just let them know how many. The team IDs for your respective class, you can change nicknames. We'll get to that in a second. You'll also be able to see the last time that they traded in the event that you are creating parameters around the students or expectations that they have to meet, whether it's, you told them to trade on a certain day or buy a certain day, you can be able to access that immediately. Their rankings will show up here, their total equity, and the password for each of those portfolios. They're blanked out for this one because it is a sample system account, but under teachers, you'll be able to see the password for your students. This becomes really helpful because we're all dealing with kids sometimes, and sometimes even adults. We forget our passwords. It happens all the time. So in the event your student changes their password to their portfolio, it's totally fine. You can always log into the Teacher Support Center to access it, and you can retrieve it for them and share it with them. One of the things that's really great about these portfolio links for your team IDs is that they're all live. So if your student expresses that they're having an issue with the portfolio, you can log into their portfolio directly and see what's going on. Or if you just want to review their portfolio to see what's going on in general, you'll be able to do that. Just make sure not to make any transactions because they are indeed live. If you would like to change nicknames, so a number of our teachers and advisors across the board tend to utilize the nickname function to identify the portfolio of a student or group of students. It's really used the most for those that are utilizing groups. It's really helpful to give students a sense of identity. So we have students that want to call themselves like the money makers or the challengers or the stock winners, or however they choose to identify. This is a really great opportunity for them to identify themselves, and you can plug it into the teacher support center for them, and it'll present on their portfolio. It'll also showcase in the rankings. So you change portfolios. When you're here, again, I'm on the View Team Portfolio section. You click under the class name. When you click on that, another screen will populate, and I'm not sure if my screen is showing the pop-up, but let me make sure it is. Let me switch over there. Yes, so you should be seeing it now. Another screen will populate, and that screen showcases your class team information again. You'd simply enter the nickname. I'm just going to put a nickname. And you click update, and you're all set. From there, you can go back to your screen. If you refresh your page, all of those things update in real time. And you'll notice that it updates to nickname. So I changed the nickname for this person to the nickname. So that's all you have to do. It's really quick, and it's a quick idea to be able to quickly identify your particular student or group of students. We also have our Spanish translations that we're building out. So if you teach an ESL class, if you have any bilingual students, if you're participating in any capacity where you prefer additional languages, we are building out our Spanish translations, including our videos. So we're actually about to thrust a whole lot of options here, and we're really, really excited about that. So right now you have our full stock market game advisor guide that's available in Spanish, our glossary that's available in Spanish, but what's to come very quickly, like in the next day or so, we have our stock market game videos that are available in Spanish. We have our same SMG essential syllabus that will all be available directly here. Our stock market game curriculum, this is everything outside of the stock market game essential syllabus. So we've been around since 1977. And throughout all that time, we've been serving teachers and students, creating curriculum, updating, removing, adding. So we're really, really excited that we have a robust offering for teachers for all of the grade levels that we serve across a number of subjects. If there is a particular topic, there's likely not a topic that we haven't addressed fully that we address within the stock market game. You can find it all here. So the stock market game essential syllabus, you're probably wondering what makes this section different. What makes it a little bit different is that it's a bit more expansive. So if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper into the stock market game and go out, see what other offerings are available outside of a stock, or if you want to know more about stocks, you want to know about IPOs, or it can vary, you will likely be able to find it here and you can peruse it accordingly. You can view all of our available curriculum, or you can view it based on lesson, activity, etc. You can filter here on the side based on a particular grade level or a particular unit. You can only see things that apply to your grade level or a specific unit. You continue to scroll here, and most of this is very user-friendly. It's what you see is what you're going to get when you click on it. Our videos will give you direct access to all of our videos. Well, all of our videos that we reference within the stock market game syllabus, just to make it easier and a one-stop shop for you. You can view them without having to go to another page. But you can access our full suite of videos, which is a lot more expansive on our YouTube channel. So I'll drop the link for our YouTube channel in the chat, so you can feel free to take a look at any point in time. These videos are also available there. You can also access directly InvestRight, which is our essay writing competition, Invest It Forward, which connects all of our students to a financial professional, and we'll get into that a little bit more, as well as if you have questions about how our stock market game syllabus aligns to standards in your state, you can also access that directly via the Teacher Support Center. As I mentioned, there are a number of ways to add teams, and you can make adjustments to your class or your respective teams at any point throughout the game session. I mentioned that you can reach out to your stock market game coordinator directly, or you can simply click on this option, put in your request, submit it, and it'll be received by the national office so it can be addressed. You can also change your password from here. Any suggestions regarding troubleshooting, if they're having some issues, there's some quick answers there. Our national help desk, you can always reach out at any point in time to ask a question. And then we also have participation certificates that are available for you to use and fill out. If at the end of your game session, if at any point you want to share and celebrate your students, because this is no small feat. They are really diving into a world that honestly I wish that came to me a whole lot sooner. And if you want to celebrate your students and the progress that they're making, we've kind of made that a little bit easier for you as well. So I'll pause there for a quick moment in the event there are any questions that are related to the Teacher Support Center and how to access that. And then I will switch over really quickly if there are. So feel free, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll pause and check the chat for a second.
Hi, Sarah. There was a question regarding to the fee.
Oh, great question. Okay. So the stock market game is available generally for, free for a bulk of the country, right? It's available at no cost. Forgive me 1 second. Let me shift the view here. It's available at no cost, but there are select locations where there is a nominal fee. But I can share with you on our list for our local stock market game coordinator that you should have received, you'll see a full view of who our coordinator listings are, and you can also reach out directly to find out if there's a cost that applies. If you're wondering too, feel free to shoot me a quick email and I can let you know. If you are in a location where there is a cost that does apply, rest assured that for a number of locations, there's also options for support. So our next slide, when it comes to introducing the stock market game, SMG has it fully laid out for you, but the easiest way, honestly, and this is across grade levels, whether you are teaching 4th graders, whether you're teaching 11th graders, is to make it applicable right from the start. And there's no better way to do that than to start with what they know. You want to kick things off and hit the ground running, start that conversation about companies they're already engaging with every single day. These are the products and services that they utilize every single day based on what's around them, based on what they use. You can ask them the clothes that they wear, the foods they like to eat, the places that they go, the car, their dream car, where they would like to go one day. Where are they watching their movies now? Interacting with their world is the easiest way to start their company research and start the conversation around what it means to invest. Next slide for me. Another great way to introduce it, our kids are all over, okay? They're on TikTok, they're on social media, they are paying attention more than any time ever before. We have young people who are interested in advocating for what's going on in the world around them, and they love trends, so there's no reason not to piggyback off of that. So discussing and starting from companies that are currently trending in the news or in their particular sector. You can ask them questions such as, does the company solve an issue that is groundbreaking? If you want to ask them, what are the companies making items that you absolutely cannot live without? What is that item that you cannot, everywhere you go, or what is that high ticket item? What is that? Who's the company behind that product? Let's start our research there. If you want it and all of your friends want it, let's find out a little bit more. And is there a company that has a history of innovation? Who's making changes? Who are the game changers out here that you hear about from their perspective? What's the company that's really leading the news and making waves across their specific sectors? That's a great opportunity to at least start them thinking about the different companies and their offerings so that they can begin their research. The next slide. Another way to introduce companies and to get them started and thinking about ways that they can begin investing is researching companies that are aligned with their causes and their passions. I think more than ever before, but definitely I don't want to limit the work that has been done in all of our generations. But we have a group of young people that are so committed to their world, committed to different causes, who are looking to make changes in ways that they can, both in their immediate communities, within their own sphere of influence, and throughout society at large. So talking to students about companies or just starting from their passions and the causes that they care about, and then looking for companies that align with those causes can be a really great way to help engage students about being impactful in their world. And if you are dealing with students that may be a bit more familiar with investing already, it's also a great opportunity to begin the discussion around sustainable companies and sustainable investing, which is investing in companies that are focused on an environmental or a governmental or social cause. It's a great opportunity to encourage those conversations and to begin the work around that. Embedded directly within the stock market game portfolio is the opportunity to look up sustainable companies as well. And there's also highlights that will happen within the portfolio should a student invest in a sustainable company. And we'll go into that a little bit more later. Our mini lesson video quick start. I always mention this for everyone's always like, okay, if I want to get started, because we have all the videos that are in the stock market game essentials syllabus, what are the main ones? What do I need to watch? What do my kids need to watch so we could trade tomorrow? And I always say this is our quick start. So if you want to provide some really quick background, everything that they would need to make their first trade tomorrow and really understand would be these four. So it's intro to investing, our intro to stocks that helps them understand what a stock is and how it functions, ticker symbols, things like that. Gives them an introduction to companies and how those function, and of course, how to build their portfolio. These are only a portion of the videos that are available, but they're a perfect landing. They're each only about 3 to 5 minutes long, as all of our videos are. They're not super exhaustive. We give the quick content, and so there's enough so that you can learn all about a particular topic in quick bite-sized bits. So we're going to go into our portfolio overview. So our portfolios, all of your students will be able to access them directly through stockmarketgame.org. That's how they can access them. They can also access them through the Stock Market Game app, available on both the Google Play and Apple stores. Our team portfolios are very robust and dynamic. Your students will love them, I kid you not. They will have the opportunity to access them at any point in time, but it does work on, their orders will go through during market hours. So some rules that I want to make sure to amplify before we get into the portfolio experience really quickly is that, one, most definitely the stock market game, just a reminder, students can invest in any stock, bond, mutual fund, and exchange traded fund that's found on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. Only those. They're the largest exchanges that are available, but they will not have options to invest in foreign exchanges, but they will have a plethora of companies, funds, and other securities to invest in. They also want to keep in mind that there is an initial minimum trade requirement of 10 shares in order to make an initial investment in a particular company. There's a minimum requirement of 10 shares. There's also a minimum requirement that the company that they're investing in has to be worth at least $3 per share. So in the event your student has heard of penny stocks or might be interested in penny stocks, they will not be allowed to invest in penny or pink sheet stocks, as they're sometimes called. Those stocks tend to be very volatile and a little problematic. So we want to encourage safe investing, and we want to avoid risky behavior, which we talk about in assessing risk in one of our videos. So that's the reason for that. You'll also, and next slide for me, Martha, is something that will come up. It's our maximum equity rule. The maximum equity rule, and just know you don't have to worry about any of this. All of these rules are already embedded within the system. I'm just highlighting them for you. Your students won't even have to do anything. You won't have to do anything. If ever they are attempting to, let's say, buy a security or buy a stock that is not on the New York Stock Exchange, for example, they'll just get an alert that says, hey, you're not able to trade this stock. So you don't have to always be wondering about it. If they try to make an initial purchase of, let's say, 5 shares and the minimum of 10, they'll get the message as well, like, hey, you need a minimum of 10 shares. So you don't necessarily have to remember all of these, but I like to amplify them in the event it's missed. So our maximum equity rule means that any participant, any user of the stock market game portfolio, you cannot invest more than 20%. In some locations, it's about 33% of your total buying power in any one company or fund. I'm going to make that a lot simpler. So for example, our portfolios begin with a virtual $100,000 cash. I'm going to only focus on cash accounts. $100,000, this means that you cannot invest more than 20% of that $100,000 in any one company or fund. So that means that would be about what? $20,000? So $20,000, I can't invest more than $20,000. And let's say I want to invest in Apple. If I attempt to invest something where the value of my investment in Apple will take me beyond that 20% allocation, I won't be able to do that. The reason for that is we don't want to encourage risky investing. We're encouraging safe investing. And part of that is teaching students about diversification. And so we don't encourage them to put all of their eggs in one basket. So if they find this really wonderful hot company and they're like, throw all the cash to it, that's a wonderful idea in theory, but we're going to limit them to only 20% for right now so they can learn more about diversification. And actually, I'll switch from here and I'm going to go to a live environment. And show you the portfolio and how it functions. So from there, I'm going to log out here and log in with a student portfolio. So student portfolios will look really similar, or usernames will look really similar. As I mentioned, you'll know that it's the difference between your teacher portfolio and your student portfolio. Teacher username and your student username. Teacher usernames always begin those last set of characters with a T. Typically, portfolio usernames, those last set of characters, either begin with a ZZ or sometimes an A. So you're going to enter your full information. So your student usernames and passwords, direct them right to their portfolio. This is both through the browser or through the stock market game app. Your students can log in whichever way best suits their needs or what is best for you. A number of our users, a majority of them, tend to utilize the browser experience only because they tend to use it within a group. Students are using it when they on their Chromebooks or their iPads or something that in class. So it's totally fine, but it really just comes down to a matter of preference. There's not one over the other. So your students, or even you, because you can also have your own stock market game account as well. When you first log in, it brings you right to the full page. What pops up automatically are our messages section. You can X this out at any point, but what you'll find here are a couple of things. If there are any messages from your local coordinator that they would like to amplify, certain videos that are available, if there are some highlights, if there's an Invest Right deadline that's coming up, a webinar that's going to be really interesting, that'll be listed here. If there are any national help desk messages, that will include things like if there's a corporate action that occurred, if there's a system, the system will be down temporarily. And usually that's usually in the middle of the night, so it doesn't affect anyone, but we do try to give you a heads up as much as possible. Those things will be listed here. Simply need to X out of that. If ever there are any additional questions, or you can always go right back by clicking that little bell. So your account information here, right at the top left-hand corner, will always be the username. In parentheses, if this was an account that had a nickname attached to it, the nickname would also be listed here in parentheses. It'll let you know what region you're in. Regions typically include a region such as elementary, middle, or high school. It's related to your grade level. This is a system account, so it's not listing me as anything, but your region is related to your grade level. This also includes those that are not falling within the 4th through 12th grade. Adults are more than welcome to utilize this program as well. So there are adult regions, there's post-secondary if you're utilizing this with post-secondary students, etc. It'll show you a ranking method in terms of how this portfolio is currently being ranked. Across locations, that can vary. It can either be ranked based on the total equity that's available in the portfolio and how it develops, or how the portfolio is developing based on a percentage against the S&P 500. How your portfolio is ranked will depend on your specific state location and its rules, which you can find in the Teacher Support Center, and your students can find under resources and rules of the game. It'll be noted there. It'll show the advisor, so whomever that adult is, whether teacher or other, who's serving in that capacity, and the school organization or the like. Right up top, because this is usually where people want all their information, is where they are ranked. The region ranking corresponds to your grade level or your status as adult, post-secondary, etc. Your region ranking will showcase where this portfolio stands among their respective grade level. So where you fall among all elementary students or middle school students, high school students, adults, teachers, whatever your region is, for those that are participating within a specific game session within your specific state. So it is separated by all of those things. So you won't see how your portfolio is performing. If I'm in Texas, it's not going to be based on folks in New York. If I'm in elementary school, it's not going to be based on those in middle school. Now, you do want to keep and be mindful of this, make sure you're in the correct region, especially if you're in a competitive division, to ensure that you're ranked appropriately. If you are participating in, let's say you're utilizing this in a club and you have several grade levels that are participating, your region will be based on the highest grade level in your group. So let's say I am teaching this and we're utilizing the stock market game after school, and I attend a K through 12 school, and my stock market game club has 7th through 9th graders in the club. Then my region will automatically be in 9th grade. A way to avoid, or high school, excuse me, if you would like to separate the region, so you have your middle school students in one and the high school student in another, and you want them to be ranked accordingly, you can simply separate them during the registration process as 2 distinct classes, if that makes sense. Okay, your coordinator ranking. Coordinator ranking refers to where your portfolio stands, irrespective of grade level. So it doesn't matter. It's going to show you where you stand, where that portfolio falls within your game session among everybody that's participating in that game session, elementary, middle, and high school, will not matter at all. State rankings, sometimes locations use them, sometimes they do not. But state rankings, if they're available in your particular state, will showcase your particular region and where it falls across the state. So if I am in Kentucky, it'll showcase where I fall within, if I'm elementary, all elementary students within Kentucky across the state where I fall. Okay. When you keep going, right up top are the big things that you're going to always pay attention to, or your students are always going to want to know right up front. The total equity, how much equity they're working with, how much their current gain is, your buying power, how much you have available to invest, and your cash balance. You have all of this information right up top at your disposal. And one of the great things about the program and the entire page is that most of these things are hyperlinked all throughout the page. So if you have any questions about anything, you're not sure what something means, you can click on them directly to get additional information on what those terms mean. All of these terms are also explained throughout our videos as well. One thing to note that can be helpful, especially when students start comparing how their portfolio is developing over time, is that this date as of. So once the session begins and they're in the flow of things, they're going for several weeks, they want to see all these things, you can always go back and adjust and see how your portfolio looks. If you need it for reference, there may be different reasons you need to see that. You can see how your portfolio was, and you can kind of backdate it. Okay. The other thing when you continue to scroll down, and in the interest of time, I'm going to move a little quicker, but rest assured that there's a pretty user-friendly, and we'll, of course, do a more thorough explanation. And we have subsequent videos that break down the portfolio use. You have a graphical representation of all of the investments that you will make. This is a brand new account. Brand new meaning there have been no investments at all. All trading portfolios begin with a virtual, emphasis on virtual, $100,000. The money may not be real, but the stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs that you can invest in, they are real. You can invest in real securities that are found in the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. What you'll notice is that I'm starting with a cash balance and equity that's higher than that $100,000. Where did that come from? In case you're wondering, and how did that happen? So I created this account technically long time ago, probably beginning of the year. If you should ever encounter a little bit more, it's never this much because no one receives their usernames and passwords as early as I did. But if you see a little bit more, like you might see $2 more, you know, a couple of dollars more when you first start in, it's simply because from the minute your portfolio is developed, which means from the minute you receive those usernames and passwords for your students, interest begins accruing for that portfolio immediately. So as interest is accruing, it's being added to your cash balance. It's never something over the top. It's pretty nominal, especially by the time the game session begins. So, and as students begin making their transactions, they'll be able to see graphically the total equity, their total long positions, the ones that they are holding, their stock positions, their short sale positions, and their total cash, and how it's performing over time. This will adjust as they continue to make their investments. They'll also be able to see right on the main page any position that they make. So every single trade that they make will begin to, and holds rather, will present here. I say hold, meaning they haven't sold it. So as long as it's in their portfolio and they've bought it or they've short sold it, it can be listed here. The ticker, the date, how many they've bought, the closing price, and they'll also be able to see things like the current price of those shares, etc., live and direct. They can also do direct research directly from the portfolio page. This means they can look up particular stocks and companies. They can also find direct information. If there's a company they would just want to really check its stock price really quickly, they can find that information here, as well as find additional descriptions on how it operates. Now, this is not the only place to conduct research. A number of our users utilize both Yahoo Finance or Google Finance. You can feel free to utilize the system that works best for you and your students. If you find that a bit more interactive, or if that explains things a little bit easier, you're more than welcome to do that. Further down, we have our market news. This is a live feed of market data. It is not reflective to the portfolio itself. That's the main question that we get. Like, oh, or am I going to see things based on what I'm investing in? If you happen to, it is completely by chance. It is not based on an algorithm of what you're investing in. It is a live market news that's happening. This is a great opportunity for students or any user to really do a one-stop quick view of what's happening in the markets and finding additional information. They can click on them and it'll bring them right to that article or that video or that whatever is trending or what's happening in the markets live and direct, always available here. To the left, we have account details. This is an itemized view, essentially, of everything that is happening within the portfolio. They'll see a full value of their longs, mutual funds, their long stocks, excuse me, mutual funds, short stocks, the various bonds, etc., and its value. This is all zero right now because no trades have been made. But I'm sure the biggest question is essentially, how do you make a trade? And that's pretty simple too. All of the functions at the top, they do exactly what you're thinking. So anything dealing with the portfolio, you can find information under the portfolio section. Anything to deal with trading, well, you can find via the enter a trade or resources, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I want to highlight before we get to trading is that a lot of the resources that we mentioned for students, for teachers, are also available for your students. So the videos that we mentioned, the SMG Essentials, there's a corresponding workbook, your students can access that too. So if there's a video that you would like to highlight, that you want your students to watch, you don't have to necessarily worry about like sending along links. You can just, as long as you know the title, they can access it directly via their page as well. Now, to make a trade when your students are ready, you're just simply going to the trade tab. This is one option and the simplest. You're clicking enter a trade. You'll see the 3 different options for stock, mutual fund, or bond trades. If you're new to exchange traded funds, a common question that we receive is how to trade funds. And people may think, and they often receive error messages saying, I'm trying to trade an ETF. It's not working in the system. They've likely tried to do it under a mutual fund trade. Exchange traded funds operate like stocks. You trade them like stocks. So if you're interested in that, and we have a video for that too, you would trade them as a stock. So when you're looking to trade a stock, when you're ready to get started, your first transaction is going to be a buy. You can't sell anything. You don't have anything that you're holding. So you're going to buy. You do have the opportunity to look up a particular ticker symbol. The system works via ticker symbols. So you will need to know that ticker symbol for that company in order to invest in it. Ticker symbols come up right in our intro to companies video that's within the SMG Essential syllabus and one of those quick start videos that I mentioned. So if you're wondering what is a ticker symbol, essentially it's the characters that help to identify a company. If you're a student that's kind of in here and they're ready to trade, they saw something coming up in the markets and they're like, oh, I have to invest right now, but they're not sure what the ticker symbol is yet, they can direct to another financial website, they can Google it, or they can do it right from this page. So let's say I want to invest in Apple, but I'm not sure what the ticker symbol is. I would just put in the name of the company and click search by company name. Let me make sure this share comes up for you. And a separate page will populate that has everything with the name Apple in it or whatever the company name is. Now, depending on the name of the company, if it's something a bit more common like Apple, they may have to scroll through, but the description will always outline exactly what it is. They can see the ticker symbol there. Oh, well, I think I stopped sharing. Apologies. They can click on the ticker symbol and it'll automatically populate into the form. From there, you can do your market order. So there are two different types of orders that are available, or two different types of ways to buy transactions, to make transactions within the stock market game. There are market orders, and those are orders that are placed during market hours. That is anything. And so you'll receive market pricing. So market is anything but Monday through Friday from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are in a separate time zone, this does not change for the stock market. They are not going to be worried that you're in Hawaii. They're not going to hold it per se, or California. The market hours will remain the same and are based on Eastern Standard Time of 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. So market means you'll receive the market price for that particular security during that time. There's also an option for limit orders. So limit orders are where you set a limit. You're setting an amount that you're willing to pay for a particular stock, and you want it to meet that amount or nothing. A small caveat here is that we are a simulation, and a simulation first. So limit orders don't operate exactly the same way as they would in other spaces. Limit orders within the stock market game, if it's during market hours, the system is going to attempt to push it through immediately. It doesn't mean that limit orders don't have any function. Limit orders can be served best for those that are outside of time zones, or for attempts to make orders outside of market hours, whether you're in a different time zone or not. Putting in a limit order can best serve you then. If you are utilizing the stock market game during market hours, it'll best serve you to just simply leave it as a market order, because it's going to try to push it through anyway. Number of shares. Remember, you must do a minimum of 10 buy shares. You can sell as many shares or as little shares as you like, but you must make a minimum of 10 buy shares. So once I've entered all of that information inside, I'm simply clicking preview trade. This is the last opportunity to make any changes to your transaction. So it provides a summary of all of your orders, of what you're about to do, including the ticker. You want to make sure that's correct, the number of shares, the market order type, the last known price, and all of the information applicable to that transaction. Before it can go through, you'll have to put in your password. That protects the integrity of the account. So no one else can just go in and make transactions for a particular portfolio. You would need to enter the password for that portfolio in order to place any transactions. That's applicable for every single one. From there, you confirm trade and you're all set. You'll get a trade confirmation page on this screen that lets you know that the trade was confirmed. If for whatever reason it's not able to go through, or you receive an error message, that will also populate here. You'll notice here, this lets me know right up front, the trade order is confirmed. That means it's indeed processed, but not fully, because it lets me know that the market is closed. So it's closed right now, but it's okay. I still placed that transaction. The system did notify that it was placed, and it also lets me know that my order will be executed the next business day when the market opens again. For every single transaction, you can go to the trade tab. So since it's after orders or after market hours, it'll be listed in the pending orders. Pending orders refers to any transaction that is placed outside of the market orders, meaning it just doesn't have a price yet. It has not been priced, so it's still pending. There is nothing that you need to do from this point. If you or your student places a transaction outside of market hours, they don't need to go back to push it through once the market opens again. The system will automatically process that transaction. Now, you do have the option in select locations to cancel an order. This is only applicable when an order is still pending. During market hours, it's going to process it immediately in quick lightning speed. You will not have the option to cancel. But for pending orders, you will have the option to cancel for select locations. For transaction notes, however, that's an area that I want to make sure to amplify. You can't see it right now because my transaction hasn't received a price, but every single transaction, once it's completed, goes into the transaction notes section. This is irrespective of whether or not the transaction was successful, whether they received an error for some reason. So a couple of reasons a transaction may not go through. One, that maximum equity rule that we mentioned. If you attempted to place an order that exceeds the equity that you have, or that 20% or 33% allocation that's available, and you tried to push it through, you'll receive an error message. It did not go through. Sometimes folks are moving a little too quickly. They miss that initial screen. You can always confirm it here. Another thing that tends to come up is that this is more so with sell orders, because you can sell. There are no limitations to, you don't only have to hold all of your transactions. You can sell within the stock market game as well and sell off your shares. But one that comes up is you may see insufficient positions in this security, usually with sell orders. Typically, a student will receive that message. Usually they're moving a little too quickly and they forget that they've already sold off a stock. So they'll receive an error message over and over again, like insufficient secure holdings in this particular security. It's because usually they sold it already, forgot that they've sold it. So the transaction note section is always helpful to go back to confirm that a transaction has processed, or especially once you get into the game session, students may have to go back if they're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I had Roblox and I've decided I want to sell it now, but they initially bought Roblox about 2 months ago. And so now, but they also sold it probably soon after that. They may have forgotten. And they're like, oh, I keep getting error message. I don't know what the problem is. I know I had Roblox. What's the issue? It may be helpful to go back to the transaction notes to make sure it's still in their holdings. Or under portfolio, they can always click on account holdings, which will bring them to a page to see exactly what holdings they currently have. Either one works, but transaction notes is a bit more direct because it shows everything, even those that are not processed at all. Okay. So in the interest of time, I want to be mindful, but also make sure you have everything you need. As I mentioned, all of these tabs are really user-friendly. Everything that you need regarding the portfolio and how it functions, including the overall experience, what you now hold. Our top holdings is also a place that a number of users use just to spark some idea of where to kind of get started, especially if you're new in an avenue. You can start with what you know, or when some folks getting a little bit more competitive, they may see what are people investing in. So this top holding showcases some of the top securities across stock market game users, irrespective of location. So this may change especially as the game session develops, but you'll notice some of the top names. They look real familiar, right? We have Apple, Amazon, we have Microsoft, Tesla, Netflix, Costco. So these, not surprising, but you can see the top stocks that are available, mutual funds, corporate bonds, all bonds that are being invested in within the stock market game, the top holdings among our users. You can see those at any time. Also within that, we have our transaction history that's similar to transaction notes with the small addition of it includes any interest, any dividends that were paid out to the account, any interest that has developed, it'll be listed there as well. Rankings, gains and losses, trades, as I mentioned, going to anything having to deal with a trade, including entering that trade, or information regarding pending trades or transaction notes, anything regarding a trade. If you're wondering why didn't it process, Did it process? How long will it process? Can be found under the trade tab. Resources are exactly that. So anyone who has a portfolio, whether it's a student, whether it's you, who wants to access some of our resources, this is a one-stop shop, including our quick videos, some additional links. We have a glossary of financial terms. We want to make sure you have everything you need to fully understand the experience that you have. And most times you won't have to direct too far away from the portfolio itself, including, of course, the rules of the game. So I'm going to shift gears here to see if there are any questions. I think we're all good. You guys okay? Yeah, go ahead.
We do have a question.
Okay.
It's from Scott. Does the system build any calls for making trades?
Oh, okay. Yes. So most things are going to be automatically processed in terms of this bid ask reviews. If there's anything, it's all involved. One thing I do want to mention too, if you didn't pick up on it already, that stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, that's what you can invest in. For those of you that may be familiar with other things, you notice that I didn't mention anything about options or futures or other types of derivatives. If you're interested in that and wondering if you can invest in those particular instruments, no, you cannot. So options, futures, and the like are not available within the stock market game at this point in time. It's a bit more advanced for most of our user base, but there are a number of opportunities even outside of that.
And as far as the recordings, they'll be available a week from today, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Usually a little bit sooner, but I always tell everyone to give us at least a week. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to not have any questions between that. If you have any questions, if you need some reference, but before you receive that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. And then some additional opportunities for support, even outside of this, that I don't want you to forget, are those stock market game webinars. They're already in session, even outside of this. You don't have to even wait for me. They are available weekly. There you can access them and see what the topics are, the times and availability through the stock market game calendar that you can access through the Teacher Support Center. And we can also drop the direct link within the chat. There are stock market game office hours that are available weekly from Monday through Wednesday. And those are interactions with stock market game teachers who are utilizing the game, and it's split by grade level. So you can talk directly to a peer stock market game teacher who's utilizing it, who has done really well and found great success, and pick their brain, right? It's a great opportunity for that. Those are drop-in sessions. You don't need to register for anything. You don't have to schedule an appointment. You can just drop in during their allotted time. Those times are also listed within the stock market game calendar. And then outside of that, you always have access to our stock market game teacher Facebook group. This is completely accessible. It operates just like any other group that I'm sure a number of us are involved in, where you can find out more information. And it's there for you to build community with other stock market game teachers and share best practices, share some highlights, what's worked for you, what's not worked for you. We have teachers that have also shared their own respective, they've kind of built out their own curricula, they've built out activities, and they share that via files there as well. So you can get some really good tips and tricks from that particular group as well.
Someone asked if you can review how to trade bonds, but I believe you're not covering that in today's session.
Yeah, so just in the interest of time, but I may be able to really quickly do that. I'm going to shift around a little bit, actually. So I'm going to quickly just go over Invest It Forward, just so you know that it's available, in addition to the stock market game and all the resources that we've made available. Should you want to enhance that experience, should you want to make things a bit more real world, because we know exposure is everything. So it's one thing for our students to utilize the stock market game platform, conduct research, and analyze their strategy. These are all incredibly essential to learning and navigating financial instruments. But so is exposure to real people. And our Invest It Forward program does exactly that. It brings students' newfound investment education to life by exposing them to the people and opportunities that exist within the financial services industry. And Invest It Forward allows students a chance to connect with financial professionals across sectors and roles, from entry level all the way to senior leadership. You can have one engagement, you can have several. It can happen in person, it can happen virtually, and you have access to our full range of financial professionals across the country. There are thousands that are registered with us, and they are all committed to enhancing the stock market game experience and ensuring that both you and your students walk away more knowledgeable of the industry, whether that means academic and career curiosity questions, finding out what career opportunities are available within the financial sector, or they can assist you with enhancing your development of stocks or mutual funds or bonds. So I'm going to shift over my screen and do a quick share so we can walk through how to make a bond transaction. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I did not mean to log out. One moment. Okay. So for bond transactions, same process, no matter the type of security you're trying to invest in, stock, bond, mutual fund, or ETF, it all begins under the trade tab and enter a trade. You select your bond transaction, assuming you're buying, because we're all starting out. So bonds, it's really interesting that it was mentioned, because I think that's the one area that people have the most questions. So we do have a webinar that we host about bonds and what they are, the different types, and how to invest in them, how to research them. So I encourage you to check out our bond webinar, noting that you can search for a bond directly within the stock market game portfolio. If you enter a bond trade, once you get to this screen, if you're not sure what type of bond you want to look for or how to look for one, you can simply click on search for bond. And this brings up a different screen where you can search for all of the three bond types: corporate bond, municipal bonds, or government bonds. All three of them you can select and choose. If you're completely new to bonds, if your students are not sure where to begin, I always suggest municipal bonds because you can look at them by state. And I always suggest your own particular state. Maybe start where you are, or a state of interest that you think has a little bit more going on, that you want to find out a little bit more of what's happening, or corporate bonds. A good way to start for corporate bonds that I suggest for a number of our students is to think about perhaps the companies that they've already invested in within their stock portfolio. So if they've invested in Disney, for example, especially the larger blue chip companies, the larger companies that have a bit more of a distribution, they likely have a bond and a corporate bond that's attributed to that company. So that's also a good way to start. If they're just like, I have no idea where do I start and begin looking for bonds? Corporate bonds are the easiest way in, or municipal, because they can look by state. So let's say I wanted to find a corporate bond. I mentioned Disney, so let's say Disney. I'd put in Disney and search by corporate bond, and this will populate another page that shows me all of Disney's bonds that are available within corporate bonds. And I can see both the symbol, the particular bond that's available, its description and name, the last price of that bond, the coupon rate. If I'm participating within a particular game session and I want to know, and I want to see the payment date that's within my game window, I can click on that so it can adjust, so I can see the rankings of those bonds based on the payment date, or same thing with maturity date. And also the rating for those respective bonds. I can see that as well. So students can start there with a general inquiry into terms of what's available. And then, hold on. And then once they click on one, the information for that particular bond populates. And then from there, if they decide to trade that particular bond, they can simply click trade. I don't know when my screen popped out. and my screen share. And so it'll put in the QSIP code, which is essentially the ticker for a particular bond. It'll populate there. If a student already has a bond that they have of interest, that they've Googled or they've utilized another financial instrument site to find a particular bond, they'll just simply need the QSIP number to enter in their trade in order to make that transaction. They put in, it's a minimum of about $1,000 for bond trades, and you're following the same process. You're going to preview bond trade. You'll always receive a summary screen for every single transaction that is placed. You'll also be, as I mentioned, you'll be prompted to enter a password that protects the integrity of the account for every single transaction that's placed. Confirm the trade, and that's it. Again, since the market is closed, I'm receiving that message that the market is closed. It'll be executed during the next business day. A great point that we didn't get a chance to touch on yet, but it's a big thing. Transactions that are placed during market hours, again, that's 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Those transactions that are processed will go through immediately, but you may notice that it may not immediately reflect onto the total equity. You may come back here and say, hey, I didn't see my number shift or my value shift. What happened? Is it, and may attempt to make that transaction all over again. There's no need to duplicate transactions. Although the transactions will process immediately, it'll reflect onto the portfolio as a whole to see it demonstrated here graphically, as well as begin to see some of the day-to-day changes at the end of day. Your overall numbers will change in terms of your total equity, your buying power, but overall reflection of the portfolio, it will be seen at the end of day. If all else fails, if students are really concerned, they can always check under the transaction notes to make sure that it's been confirmed. Pending orders, as a reminder, are any transactions that are placed outside of market hours. It'll also include mutual fund and bond transactions, and that's because they're priced at end of day. Those will also process as soon as they receive a price. Okay. Here. So I know we went through a lot of information today and a number of them. So I'll try not to do too much to inundate you, but let's wrap up really quickly with some final questions in the event you have any. Now is the perfect time to do that. So let's actually, I'll start off with some frequently asked questions. We'll kick off from there. Use this as an opportunity if you have any additional questions to put them in the chat box. I'll go through the frequently asked questions, and then we'll shift over to any questions that may be in the chat. So a question that we receive all the time is, can I request an Invest It Forward volunteer if I use the stock market game with my after school group or on the weekends? Absolutely. So I mentioned really briefly that Invest Forward connects financial professionals with students, but it's not limited to the school experience. If you are a homeschool co-op, if you're doing this with a parent with your child or children, if you're doing this with a nonprofit organization, that you're doing this and you meet on Saturdays, there are no limits to, as much as possible, we will try to match you with the volunteer. Sometimes actually those after school groups and clubs or those Saturday groups that meet sometimes are better in terms of being matched faster because it's outside of the typical work window. But if you're thinking this may not be a good opportunity for me to include someone to come in because I use it after school, rest assured that you can feel free to make that request as well. Another common question, my students are trying to sell shares of their stock, but I'm receiving an error message. What do I do? As I mentioned, if this is within the portfolio, if your student ever receives an error message, if you're also participating and have your own portfolio with us, you receive an error message. The first thing I would suggest is to go right to the transaction notes. There's typically a description of why, so it'll tell you immediately. So the typical error messages are usually for sell shares, or as I mentioned, you've likely sold it already and forgot and didn't realize, or In some cases, depending on what is happening with the markets in a particular stock or security, there are times where the ticker symbol has changed. So if a company is under a new name, if they've merged, if they've been acquired by another company, there are times where the ticker symbol changes. And so the student may have to sell shares under the new ticker. That'll also be listed, and our portfolio system updates automatically. So it usually, for corporate actions like that, there's usually a turnover of about 24 to 48 hours. So it's applied to the system. But if the ticker symbol has changed in real life, the ticker symbol has changed for our system as well, and they may need to use the new ticker. But most times it's because they sold the shares already. Do my students have access to the Teacher Support Center? They do not. Your students access the stock market game portfolio. They do have access to a number of resources that are also available via the Teacher Support Center, and the ones that are specifically best suited for students. So that includes our SMG Essentials workbook, which complements the SMG Essentials syllabus, and those mini lesson videos across topics that we mentioned as well, both in English and Spanish. How can my co-teacher access the Teacher Support Center? If you are working with someone else, whether it's a co-teacher, whether it's another parent, whomever it is, you can simply just share your respective teacher username and password with the individual that you're working with so that they can also access student information. What happens if I lose or forget my Teacher Support Center login credentials? Simply reach out to your local stock market game coordinator, and they'll be able to resend them for you. Is it possible for someone to come to my class and teach my students the game? I think that's one of the biggest questions that we receive. And as much as we would love to do that, that is not how we function, but that's for a good reason. One, you guys do this best, and no one knows your students best than you. And also, we supplied everything that you need. I kid you not. You will have everything that you need to launch successfully throughout the duration of the program. Should you ever have any hiccups, please reach out to your local stock market game coordinator at any point throughout your SMG experience for additional insights or guidance. So I'll kick off for any additional questions in the meantime. And if you need to drop off, you can feel free to reach out to myself, sbryant@sifma.org, the National SMG Director, or your local stock market game coordinator at any point. So I'll stop the recording now and just take any questions that we have.